Hello everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Let's Talk Dog Business. Now, I'm going to be a little bit more professional in this one than I am normally. Not always, but I'm going to try. And I even wrote a little thing. I'm quite prepared, Jason, so I'm going to give you a nice little introduction here. So, today we are joined by PACT, who are an ABTC-recognised organisation training and assessing dog professionals on welfare-first, science-led methods. They are also a certified B Corp company, which I definitely want to explore a bit later on. And in a previous episode, we said we would welcome any CPD provider to come on and talk openly about the business landscape in the dog training industry. And PACT, incredibly, took us up on that. So this is why they are here today. So we believe that as an industry, whether you are providing qualifications like PACT or business coaching like us, we are all building on the same foundations. The difference is simply in flavour and preferences each of us bring to the table. So today's conversation isn't about competing voices, but it's about exploring how we can collectively support trainers and behaviourists to build sustainable, ethical practices that work for them. Our guest today is Jason Light, Director at PACT Dogs Limited. Jason brings over 20 years of senior leadership experience from the public sector, and he's also a chartered environmentalist and a fellow of the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment. At PACT, he helps steer the organisation's strategy and standards, making sure their training and assessment programmes are not just welfare focused, but also values driven. So hi, Jason. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. Please do feel if you need to add anything to my lovely little intro that I did. And just say hi to all of our listeners.
Thank you for having me on. It's always great to have an opportunity to kind of talk to different people in the sector. And talk about business. And you mentioned my favorite word, sustainability, as well, and kind of, how we can have truly sustainable business in every sense. And, the financial sense, longevity, resilience, and all of the kind of social and economic benefits that you can achieve. So, really lovely to come and speak to you all about that.
Yeah, it's great. I'm looking forward to today's conversation. So tell us a little bit then about what it is. I know I've done that introduction, but just so people switch off when it's a nicely scripted introduction. Yeah, like real terms of what it is PACT do in layman's terms to help trainers and behaviourists.
So multiple different things. So we run sort of straightforward CPD and training and webinars and things like a lot of organisations do. Our kind of core business is running training courses. So we have a couple accredited courses which have been reviewed thoroughly and are recognised by the ABTC as meeting their standards for what they call animal training instructor, which is a kind of technical term for dog trainer, and animal behaviour technician, which is a sort of practical role which is heading towards kind of behavioural in that sense. So we have a couple courses that we run that are hybrid. So they're a lot of it's online, but quite a lot of it is in person as well. So we have in-person days. And within those, we do touch upon business skills, which is what kind of brought me into this session. And once you get through those courses, there's a fair bit of assessment, which then means that you can go on our register, but you also go on the ABTC register, which is a growing sort of group. So we've been running PACT for about 4.5 years. It was an organisation before we took over, and we were kind of given the opportunity to do that. And we've sort of more than quadrupled in size on membership in that time. So it's a growing community, and we provide quite a bit of support and try and kind of help our members in all sorts of ways. We do wellbeing sessions, live sessions every month, and have all sorts of different webinars and try and help them in every kind of facet of their career, so they can grow and become I think we use the phrase, the best dog trainer they can be. So it's kind of doing that. And, part of that is creating a bit of a framework they can build upon, and engaging with other organisations if they need additional support and things, which is very much part of that.
But about how difficult it is to almost get that experience as a dog trainer. I think certainly when you're going down the force-free, the positive reinforcement, like that welfare-based route, it's an easier in respect of, you can do a lot of these online courses now, and it's very theory-based, and a lot of trainers, just from personal experience, and certainly from me being one of those trainers and doing all of the online studying initially, it did feel like the practical skills are still lacking. So it's actually really nice that you guys do that hybrid. Because is it 2 in-person weekends that you guys do as part of your course?
Yes. So within our kind of dog trainer course, there's 2-day in-person sessions. Also, whilst they're doing the course, they also submit homework. So there's just over a dozen different kind of activities. So they get shown an example of how to do a certain activity with the dog, and then they film themselves doing that. And quite often in all sorts of different ways. There's the sort of ethical framework that people operate in, but we really encourage people to kind of do the different activities how they would like to and how it works for them. And, I know Steve, who predominantly marks the homeworks, nothing makes him more excited than seeing someone doing something in a new way and kind of learning. And I think, there's something about teaching that you continually learn. It's a real privilege. But so through the course, there's a certain amount of shadowing hours they need to clock up with different trainers. And we obviously have our network as the wider ABTC network, and also people go and see trainers which aren't on those registers as part of that. The homework, and then the in-person days. The in-person days are really magical. We don't tend to do the sort of hot bit of the summer, so we're having a bit of a break while we're waiting for the sun to die down a bit. So we've got some next month. But the last session we had, it was just something quite special. Seeing they had their kind of day 3. They were a bit nervous. There's a certain level of trust, isn't there, with going out there and doing training in front of your peers and things. We do a lot of work to create an environment that people feel comfortable doing that. But the last set I saw, who were maybe a bit nervous on their day 3, and then their day 4 absolutely smashed it. I think we're all nearly in tears of joy just watching how brilliant they all were. It's kind of quite something seeing that. I think it's, everyone thinks they're the kind of best organisation, and we're kind of say, oh yeah, we're kind of platinum standard. And I think we do work hard to set a kind of really good standard. I would say it's, in a way, it's a bit like learning to drive, and you kind of pass your test. You've got a certain amount of skills. You've got that kind of mechanical skills you need for the practical elements. And then it's only really kind of once you get on the road on your own and you're kind of doing it, that you sometimes you can do it without a bit more relaxed. And, I think we've all experienced that, where you kind of learned to drive and it's a kind of hot, sweaty experience of kind of doing it. And you get that bit of paper that says you can drive, but it's that's sort of setting the base for you to kind of build upon over the next kind of months and years and things. So, and we try and support people through that once they get through that.
Yeah, it is. And something that I was thinking about as you were talking was that imposter syndrome bit, which I'm sure comes up a lot from your end, but it comes up a lot from our end as well, doesn't it? Now, we always like to explore imposter syndrome because partly we think, are they actually prepared enough to go out into the world to be a dog trainer? So does that come back to like how much hands-on experience have they had? How much practicing as a dog trainer with the confidence behind them do they feel? And then there's the other element which we like to dig into, which is what are the communities like that people are hanging out in, and it's that fear of judgment from other trainers? Or is it the business side is lacking so that they don't actually have any confidence in that part? And so for us, we spend a lot of time with the people that work with us to try and figure out where that imposter syndrome comes from. And I don't know, I feel like sometimes we're all about kind of working together in this industry and building collaborations and going like, how can we do things better for that end user, which is the new dog trainer coming into the world? So like, how can we, I mean, first of all, what are your views on that imposter syndrome, and how do you see it manifest? And then what more do you think we could be doing as you as the CPD provider, us as the business support, like working together to try and alleviate that imposter syndrome a little bit?
Yeah, lots of different things on that. So it's all very personal, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned yourself, Vicky, there's lots of drivers. You could be quite far in your career, and that kind of Dunning-Kruger thing of the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know about different things. And that's a matter of kind of being aware of that and taking a step back and thinking, actually, I do know quite a lot, and I'm just being a bit hard on myself on this. I think on the business side, so within our course, we have a few modules that talk about business. As you'd expect for someone like me, who's a kind of sustainable business person, there's an angle, slightly different angle to that you might get on other courses where I'm talking about different facets of business, and we can kind of talk about some of those. But it's very much, we try and talk to people about the things they need to be aware of. Here's some of the legislation that you need to be aware of when you run a business, depending on what type of business you run. I run the business modules with a kind of little handbook and a checklist that people can fill in. And it's very much a think about what you would like to do. And there's different ways of running a business, or maybe not even running a business. You might kind of think, I don't like the mechanics of it to the extent that actually I'd be better off working for a charity or not running a business. And all of those things are perfectly valid approaches to take. You might want to do a partnership and team up with someone because that takes some of the burden off. And also I think the key bit for me is people understanding that where they are now might not be where they are in future. And sometimes you need to kind of look at this and go, actually, I set up a business which focuses on agility, and I loved it then. And actually, I prefer doing this, and I've named my business, Jay's Agility Business. And at some point, you just need to go, actually, that doesn't really sit where I am now, so I need to kind of reset it and maybe set my business up with a new brand and thing. And we have members do that all the time, where they contact us to update their details, and they've reflected on where they're at. And I think we try and help them understand the different elements they need to know and where to get advice. And we have like discounts and things, and different organizations, people can get additional support. But also try and give them the confidence that they can reach out to the community and say, what do people think of this? And people do that. They put their new websites and stuff up, and people try and support them, but also have the confidence to change direction. And, that kind of sunk cost fallacy where people kind of get stuck in a thing and they think, actually, I can't, I need to stay on that course because people know me for this, whereas they actually prefer different things. So part of how we do that is I always talk about the exit at the beginning. And I think sometimes people think that's a bit kind of negative. But I will always encourage people to, if they've come up with an idea, to right at the start think how that can end. And if you put it from a kind of training analogy, it's a bit like how people are when they feel a bit backed into the corner. They haven't got an eye on where the door is. There's all sorts of psychology about people sitting nearer the door so they feel more comfortable even in difficult meetings and things. And I always encourage people right at the beginning, and we do it in our kind of business courses, what does the exit look like? How would you leave this business or this organization, so that you can feel comfortable with what you're doing, knowing that route is available to you if you ever need it. So there's quite a few different kind of ways we go about doing it. It's very personal. Sometimes it depends how you wake up in the morning, if you feel a bit imposter syndrome-y. I think everyone kind of does it. It's reaching out and feeling like you can is probably the first thing.
Yeah, I like it. And I really like the thought of talking about the exit strategy quite early on, because funnily enough, we were literally just having a conversation. Vicky had got a note off of someone that we'd been talking to for a while who decided to leave the industry altogether and just go and do something completely different. And the energy in that voice note, wasn't it?
The lightness in her voice since the last time I spoke to her was like, oh, I'm so happy. I've closed the business. I'm earning more money now. I'm freer. And you can just tell. And actually, I said, it saddens me in some way because it didn't work. And if she'd maybe got the support she needed before, then it could have been different. But actually, if that works better for her and their life is better in that respect, great. Like, I think that's the right thing for her to do. So it's looking at it, I suppose, in that way as well. It's not always going to end in the way you think.
Yeah. No, it's, it's a good way to try and look at it and go. And I liked the way that you framed it in, it may not be necessarily you starting a business, but you can still be doing the dog stuff, and whether that is charity or partnering up with someone, like that's actually quite nice. It's not something you typically find in, or certainly any of the other CPD courses that I have done. And I think this is where, for us, having been in industry, like on the ground running dog businesses for many, many years now, it's I think the way you just phrased that, of like, it saddens us that people feel the way that they do in their business. And that's ultimately why, like, we came into existence, to go, how can we be part of something that is going to stop people feeling so crappy about it, I suppose. What's your take and experience then of people? Because we know there's I'm desperately trying to find stats, and I am actually considering doing this as an actual project and do a little, I've still got part of my university brain on, I swear, like I actually want to do a research paper on this, because they don't exist, do they? These stats just do not exist of how many trainers there are in the UK. Like, we know the pet industry in itself is worth like billions of pounds, yet somehow there is this anecdotal feedback and consensus that dog trainers are leaving the industry because they're not earning enough, they're not attracting the right clients, which is causing them this headache and this pain. Some aren't attracting hardly any inquiries in the first instance in order to even have the opportunity to make any money from it. What's your thoughts on why, if I can be as bold as to say, the industry is in the state that it is in?
I would sort of, I think we're in a privileged position with PACT because we are working with and supporting so many brilliant people, and we're seeing their training, that how they're growing, and they're sharing all sorts of information. I am a massive geek, especially business geek and stats geek. So I actually do have stats on some of this, and I don't know how much I can really share because it's probably not fair, but we, as part of how we operate, I do stats pretty much every month on how we're doing as PACT, and then every year I do an update on the sector. So I think we go back to that discussion you were having a few podcasts ago about whether organizations have long-term strategies and things. And I have a business plan that we update at least once a year, normally a couple of times. And as part of that, there's sector analysis. So I've actually got data for over a few years of how many registered members there are with pretty much every organization I could find in the UK. So, and it has actually seen growth over the last few years. Good kind of 20% growth in the number of people on the various different registers. It's quite hard because obviously some people are on more than one register, so it's not as straightforward as that. But certainly on the registers, I mean, we've over our 4 years of operating PACT, we've grown the ABTC register. I think we've accounted for about 60% of the growth in that, where we've been really kind of working with lots of people, and we've seen really high growth. I think we had maybe a dip maybe a year and a half ago. I think the sector across the board, there was maybe, as the recession was kicking in, I think there was a real growth after COVID, and I think it kind of dipped a little bit. But we've well towards selling out our January course already, and we're only in August. So I think the sector's kind of got past that bubble, if I'm honest.
The sector's growing in terms of the number of trainers coming in, and going down these accredited routes is growing, which is fantastic to see and hear. I think the vibes we kind of get on the ground is, whether it's in that first year, whether it's in the first 3 years, but there seems to be a point, again, massive generalization across the industry, that trainers and well, actually, I was talking to somebody the other day, and the thought process was behaviourists struggle more than trainers. So the trainers are able to consistently put out like your workshops and your classes and things like that. Now, whether or not they are earning financial stability is a question mark. Again, these are the stats that I genuinely don't have. It's just the anecdotal stuff from being on the ground for as long as we have, and the people coming through our doors. So the industry, I would agree, it is growing, and I love the fact that you guys are. I love the fact that you guys actually pair up with the ABTC as well, because that was one of the big reasons that I wanted to put my staff members through your course. It was an important thing for me. And when I was going down my CAB journey, I actually I had to pay with you guys to do what was it? It was like an online assessment, like a 90-minute quiz or something. And then I decided that I didn't want to do the CAB ring in the end, after I've just spent 3 years at university, but hey ho. So I'm aware of all of that. But yeah, it's this feeling that, do I want to go as far as to say people are struggling?
They are struggling.
Yeah.
A lot of people are really struggling, and they've got no, again, I'm generalising here, but there's a real lack of any strategy that we're seeing. People are just stabbing around in the dark, trying to do what they can do best. And maybe the measure of trainers doing better is they get more clients in, because they can offer classes and workshops, and it's lower ticket, and get more clients in. But does that equate to more money? Like you said, financial. Behaviourists generally charge more, so therefore that's going to be a harder sell if you don't know the strategy around the value behind it, and they haven't got the marketing skills and the sales skills and all the other skills that we teach within our programs. So I guess it's where's the, and I don't want to say failing, but there's an element of failing somewhere, because we're almost like mopping up the aftermath of a lot of it. That's how it feels. Yeah,
it's almost like there isn't a clear roadmap for the industry to follow. And I don't think it's necessarily specific to the dog industry either. I think this is across the board in every industry. Like whether you want to go and be a hairdresser and open up a salon, it's unlikely, or I imagine it'd be very similar. Like ducking and diving to try and see you through all these mics. I imagine it'd be very similar in that you will go and get your hairdressing qualification, accreditation, learn the practical skills, and then if you want to then try and develop that into a business, you go and do that separately.
Yeah.
I think it's it's just how can we all do, because I think we all want the same thing, don't we? Like anyone who's in the dog industry, like we want dogs to thrive, we want owners to do amazing, we want trainers and behaviourists to feel supported and have incredible programs to lean back on and go, do you know what? I felt fully supported in this. They're bringing the idea of well-being and sustainability into my early thought processes of going into this industry. It's how can we get people to stay in it longer with the right support. And again, I'm only going on my experience and the experience of all the businesses that have passed through CBA's doors of CPD providers in general. And I'm not even saying that this is necessarily a failing. It's just a fact that the business module is such a small element of the whole thing. And in some respects, quite rightly so. Like, people are going to CPD providers for the dog knowledge. So it's how can what needs to happen, I suppose, for businesses to have a better chance of
not only
thriving. The cheesy ChatGPT thriving word.
Yeah.
I'd say there's a kind of question to yourselves, really, as if, obviously your business is there to support people with this. So you're kind of in the sharp end in a way of that. So I guess, do you feel like people coming to you is representative of the whole sector, or is that because of what you do, you're more likely to see people who are struggling, and it means that you're seeing more of that?
I don't know. I think this podcast is such a catalyst for people to listen to it and do whatever they want to do with it. And some people take action off the back of it. Some people actually try and change things off the back of just our conversations and who the guests we have on, and that's great. And there are some people that literally go like, oh my God, like what you guys are saying, I've never heard any of that anywhere. And you're real people and you've been through it and you've struggled, and now you're here to help us potentially. So I don't know, to be honest, but I do know that the majority of people that are coming in are really struggling in one way or another with confidence, with the imposter syndrome we talked about earlier, with a real lack of business direction. They've got what tends to happen is we go, oh shit, we've got no money, let's add on this service, let's do dog walking, and let's do it like I did all of that. I had no business knowledge, so I was like, oh, what can I do to bring more money in? Let's do dog walking, let's do hoopers, let's do so I added on a million different services, and I don't know where I'm going with it, but I'm just trying to make ends meet and get through like my life as a dog trainer. When actually the passion was dog training, and I was putting more focus on dog walking, for example. And I'm like, this isn't who I want to be. But no one was there to support me, and nobody's there to guide me on that. And so like bumbling around for that many years, being a part of the ABTC for you, ABTC.
I guess so.
So many acronyms. oh my God. Like APDT for years, and like, did I feel like I got the support there? No, I didn't. And this is where, like, when I met Jo, she was offering me support that wasn't available. And then obviously we came together and kind of became this unstoppable force in the business world. But I just feel like, for me, for most trainers coming through, they're kind of like, this is so new to us. This is such a revelation to us that we just don't know. And we're like, how do you not know?
Yeah, but I understand where you're coming from. Like, it could look as if it is from that biased lens, and what I
it could. Yeah, it could.
And I think what I would say is that because of the podcast platform, we've had people reach out across the globe with various different viewpoints on it, from even the fact that I'm not a struggling trainer. I'm actually doing really well, and I would arguably fall into the category of I am thriving. I've got enough work. I've got too much work. I've got a team. I'm earning a decent amount of money. However, everything you're saying I can also relate to. So it's been quite interesting to get all these different feedbacks. And because we attend lots of in-person events as well, like we talk a lot to people. So it's a hard one to answer definitively.
It's a hard one to answer.
Because I think there's, as with anything, there's going to be areas where, yeah, absolutely, those people come into us, they want it. They've got that spark in them to want more for their business, which is arguably what I was as an individual. I think I was looking for something that I felt didn't exist, and arguably that's down to a background being in a different life, I suppose, and falling into dog training more than that's always been my purpose and passion. So yeah,
we do have to do a lot of reflection about how we used to view the world before we did this.
Because it's hard when you move on. Yeah,
it is really hard.
The more you learn, you kind of go, oh, that's my thought process now. And you're like, hang on a minute, I was that dog trainer who was ticking along, I was doing okay, I was whatever, but adding all these things on because that's the only thing I knew how to do. And I suppose it's that, isn't it? It's going like thinking back to my puppy school days, because that's how I started. I trained through puppy school and then became a member of the APDT. And I look back at their business module, which may be different now, may have changed, but from feedback, I don't think it has, and go like, there wasn't anything really in there that I could do anything with. And the voices and the conversations back then in our forums and stuff like that were kind of the same as we're seeing now. So I don't feel like anything's really changed in that respect. And again, it's not a blame game here. It's just like, what can we do to work together better to make the difference? And give people a better head start in it, I guess. And this is where this conversation is kind of going and going like putting our heads together, what can happen really. I
think, we use, before we started PACT, we had sessions with a business coach. We've just had some team building sessions with a business coach. We've hosted external business coaches for our members and things, but, we try and be who we, be who we're kind of talking to our members about being, and we get guidance on our marketing. We're just getting some support from an external expert to review our teaching platform and how we operate that and things. So we always encourage our members to get and seek external support and things, and understand that that's available. That's kind of as much as we can do to kind of say, well, we do it ourselves. It's a legitimate thing to do. You can kind of get different support. So I think it's always good to see organisations providing that. From a kind of sector position, I think one of the interesting things and reasons why we kind of got involved in PACT in the first place was about kind of bringing different parts of the sector together and collaborating and trying to move away from the kind of competition mindset to more kind of collaboration. And I think something that I really love seeing is we're seeing more and more kind of behaviourists and trainers cross-referring between each other. And, ABTC behaviourists you can claim on your insurance. So some of those behaviourists are doing training packages as part of the behavioural package, which can be delivered by multiple people if it's part of the package with the CAB. So there's a lot more work of people kind of working together as a team across the different roles, which hopefully helps people. And you start to see, I've seen, people being referred for dog training from behaviourists and vice versa and things. And hopefully, building those relationships positively and starting to get that support, because it can be a bit isolating.
Oh, very.
Yeah,
it can. And those true collaborations, they're so few and far between, aren't they? Because there's kind of surface level support we feel in some groups, isn't there? Of like, oh yeah, we've got this group together where we're all trainers and we talk to each other, but then what's the depth of that and how is that actually benefiting you both? And okay, like we might want conversational support and just be like a vent for something that's annoying you, but then can we go deeper with that? And I think that is quite a rarity in this industry, isn't it? Again, like other industries, probably the same.
That was the thing I always really struggled with, because we're all guilty of doing it. I feel like we all talk about collaboration and how it should be a thing, like do that over competition, which we're all massive advocates of. And I remember going through all my studies to be a dog trainer and everything. And I even brought this up with the university lecturers as well, because it came up in their business module, which, considering it was a 3-year degree, the business bit was a term. So what's that, like 12 weeks or something? I don't know. And I was like, oh my God, I can't be dealing with this. It's like, no. Where I was going with that. how it's that tangible bit, isn't it? It's like, how do you actually make that happen? Because again, a lot of my learnings going through learning how to be a dog trainer and behaviourist, it was, oh yeah, go and collaborate with the local vets, and maybe here's some template letters that you could use to go and write and send them to the vets and do all of this, that and the other. And it's like, okay, that kind of gets the conversation going. And maybe this was just my brain worrying at the time, but then I was like, okay, so now the vet said yes. How does that actually work in principle? So do I then have to say to that client, because I'm always trying to think about that client experience in this. And I'm like, okay, so if I've then said to the client, right, you need to go and see the vet, go check out if it's pain or whatever. So you organise that, you pay for that. And then somehow that vet feedback's got to get back to me. And then I've then got to try and figure that out. But then maybe now I need to get either a veterinary behaviourist involved or a behaviourist, or I need to refer on to another trainer or a canine massage person. It's like, how does that work from the tangible business element of how do we make this seamless for the, and I still don't have the answers to this. It's still trying to figure out how to I say bleed it all together, blend it all together.
A lot of it's getting rid of the middleman, and the middlemen are every individual person, and going like, I'll just do this whole thing. Like, I don't mean provide all the services, but I'll just be the liaiser of everything so that it makes things easy.
And it is a hard one, isn't it? We tried to have this conversation with Catherine recently.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is culture, really. It's kind of how you operate as individuals and organizations and things. And that's something we spend a lot of time looking at, and how we are, how even the messaging, how we as PACT, we would never really comment on any other organization or anything, because once you start talking negatively about people or organizations and things, it's only a couple thought process steps to think, oh, they might talk about me like that kind of thing. And then it creates a bit of a toxic culture. So we run our courses with cohorts of students. So, and it's part of the reason why the in-person days are so magical, because you've got the same group of kind of 30 students who kind of have met each other virtually, and then they get together in person for the first time. Most of the time they go out for dinner or they stay in hotels together, and they grow proper relationships and things. And, as I mentioned earlier, that kind of trust between each other in order to be a bit vulnerable and do a bit of training in front of each other while they're learning. And I think that's something we've really tried to do. And things like DogX, our conference, our first conference was a PACT conference, and we had lots of emails from people saying, am I allowed to come because I'm not a PACT member? And we were like, well, absolutely. We called the conference Connecting Communities. And that's why we created the brand of DogX, because it would be a bit more neutral and people wouldn't necessarily think, oh, there's a barrier because we're saying it's PACT. It's kind of a slightly different. And we put a lot of effort and thought into trying to create a space where people develop that positive culture of actually, I can talk to people about this. Prior to PACT, and part of how like Steve and Nat and some of the other directors got together was Nat used to run a dog workshop, like networking, like dinners, and she had a kind of a coffee shop thing where all of the trainers in the area all kind of went for a coffee together and to try and create a bit of a positive relationship rather than kind of this sort of online thing that you see sometimes. And we've really tried to kind of develop that within the community and things, because as good as DogX is and the talks and everything, sometimes it's the networking drinks bit at the end and the karaoke bar afterwards. That's the real bit where people start to kind of grow friends and friendships and things. So but but it's quite hard, and it is cultural. And I think online sometimes creates a bit of a space that can be a bit negative. But if you can build those relationships and do it, then that's where you can really find proper support. Even if it is, as Vicky said, just having someone you can go and vent with. But quite often I always find things come back round again when I've kind of maybe done a bit of mentoring for someone in the environment sector, and then 5 years down the line I kind of drop them a line and sort of say, do you need any support with this? And things do come back round, even if it's not direct sometimes. But trying to foster that is really important to us.
So just for my understanding, because it's been a while since I looked at the actual PACT course itself. So is it a 6-month program?
So it's a course that you have kind of 18 months to deliver, and you can extend if need be. But the main content drops weekly over 6 months. So we have people who are super keen and they've got the time and space, and they will blast through it as quick as they possibly can and do. And the course includes, I talked about the homework, it includes all of the assessments and things. So there's no extra costs. You can you do the whole course and you've done your practical and theory assessments. But you can do it flexibly in your time. So the in-person days are kind of fixed. But everything else is, on a Tuesday morning, the lectures drop, or the homework videos and tutorials drop, and then you can watch them when you like, either online or on your mobile apps and things. So it's got the flexibility, but it also means people can really kind of go at their pace.
Yeah. Okay. And what happens at the end once somebody's accredited? They've done the thing. They've passed it. What's the next step someone takes?
So hopefully, once they finish the ATI course, they go on to do our next course. That's the dream that they have. But they then they can go on the ABTC register, so they can go on that process. We've got kind of ongoing CPD sessions. We've got the monthly wellbeing sessions they can go into. There's obviously everyone's got community groups, so there's a community group. There's the kind of recertification process every year. So there's a submission around your insurance and CPD and things. And we obviously have things we do. There's other courses you can do elsewhere and things that can go on to that. So they're not kind of, they didn't just finish the course. And I mean, they can do. You could finish our course. You could go and join another ABTC organisation because you've been assessed. You've ticked those boxes. Our ABT course, once you complete that course and pass the assessments, you can then join as a student behaviourist as part of the APBC. So that fits the entry requirement for that role, which is, great seeing people go off on their journeys around becoming a behaviourist. So there's different pathways that people can take, and we're always sad. Some people, will do the course and decide not to stay on. That's always quite sad because we like kind of seeing people grow, but as I said earlier, there's always different reasons and pathways and things for people.
Yeah. Okay. And is the continuation courses predominantly dog knowledge, or is that still tying in some of those earlier business modules?
So our ABT course is predominantly dog, but actually includes quite a few other species because that standard with the ABTC has a requirement for other species. So there's actually a bit of cat and horse, and I think there's a donkey lecture in there and a few other kind of species. So it's not, and we do talk about, there's a requirement within the ATI and the ABT standards around understanding interspecies and things. So there is a little bit of other animals in some of our courses, but yeah, it's predominantly dog. I think once you're kind of going, I think the business support is more in that we've got a few talks and there's a few lectures you can see, and I think we don't we're not sort of specific about holding on to people. There's brilliant advice elsewhere. As I kind of mentioned earlier, it's always great seeing people finding their own ways of doing stuff as well. We're really not prescriptive about our way is the only way you should do things. I think we're really passionate about trying to show best practice and some of the sustainable business things that we get up to and we like to share and talk about. I like to think of as kind of business 2.0. It's a kind of really modern way of doing business and things, and all of the B Corp process and everything. But that's not the thing that everyone needs to do or has the capacity and things to do. So we will share that information, but it's really people helping people have the right tools to go and find the path and the support they need.
I'm hearing when you're talking about PACT that you are very good on that knowledge side. You're very good at providing everything that people would need from that new dog trainer coming in perspective and getting really confident with all of that stuff. As a new dog trainer, if I was coming into PACT, what's the expectation for me then, I suppose, in terms of, because this is something that we find is very blurry a lot of the time, I suppose, is setting the expectations. Because someone comes towards us at CBA and expects dog CPD knowledge, they're absolutely not going to get that, and we don't get into it. We don't get into anything around the dog training when I say methods, I mean techniques around how you would teach a dog to do something, even though sometimes I feel like it kind of falls into that, a little bit. We go this is what we're here to do. If I was a new trainer coming into PACT then, and I am literally starting from scratch and I'm going, I need the knowledge part, which is where we all start. Well, most part, people start. Is there a really clear communication then, I suppose, about what it is they need next? Because you mentioned about we want people to take their own path and things like that. But from an overarching perspective of this is our, and again, it's our role within your side of the industry and our side is to go, we know that the dog knowledge bit isn't it. There is a lot more to it than that to get the successful business working well and all that sort of stuff. So from that kind of almost responsibility thing of if someone was coming into us to say, I want to learn all the business stuff first, which is rare, but if they did, then I need to learn the dog training side, we would be okay, so you can't do it without the dog training side. That's kind of the essential skills here. But as far as we're concerned, we want people to understand that the business skills are as essential as the dog knowledge side. So I suppose that's a really long-winded question about what their expectations are when they come in. Do they feel they're going to get everything from you, or do they feel that we'll do this part and we'll do it really, really well, and then you need to go here to get X, Y, Z, and maybe give them an idea of what it is they're going to get from somebody else, I suppose, is the real question.
Yeah. I think, it's difficult to kind of fully recommend anyone else unless you've got a partnership with them formally, or you've gone through their process and things. So, we do within our kind of talks and things, we show examples of how we get support and encourage people to kind of do that. And we've got discounts, and there's a couple different organizations that you can get a discount for things like business support and stuff. So we don't kind of recommend them per se, because it's quite hard, but we certainly don't discourage, and we do, we get support ourselves, so we encourage others to do that. I think managing expectations is really important with every transaction or business activity. So, we don't sell ourselves, or hopefully it doesn't come across that we're super business experts and you're going to do a kind of 6-month course in business as part of the course. Within the ATI standards from the ABTC, there are requirements around understanding legislation and business bits with that. So we have to cover some of that material within the course, both to be fair and give them the enough understanding to know where they need extra support, but also because that's part of our kind of code of conduct. And, if people are operating in a way that contravenes that, then we have to hold them accountable for that. And if we haven't taught them that, or it's not been part of that, then it wouldn't really be fair for us to hold someone accountable for, hey, you're doing this thing and it contravenes this piece of legislation around, we can't really hold them accountable unless we've at least made them aware that that's there and things. So I think it's really important that there is some business within that. But I think it's, it would be a whole, I did a 3-year business management degree, and, was just about past the driving test to go and understand business after 3 years. So there's only so much you can do within a kind of shortish course. But to be really clear that, we give you some ideas, and we identify things where you might have a blind spot and didn't understand that, this is how, it works with copyright, and, here's a link to how you find out a bit more about that. And here's how it works with, those kind of little nuggets to help them on their way. And they get a, massive list of links for additional support and guidance and stuff. But, I don't think we would ever sell it that we're, it's a super business kind of thing. And, definitely encourage people to get additional support, because you're continually learning. I am, listening to your podcasts, all the different podcasts, you always learn new things and ways to kind of develop and improve. And, a lot of what we do with PACT is where we're super busy. I'm sure everyone has 10 times more things than they have the time to do. And a lot of what we do, how we operate PACT, is we try and find ways to tick multiple boxes with one activity. So, and a lot of that comes out in the sustainable business activities. So, we have to bank. We have to have a bank account, really boring kind of trend, stuff. How can we do that in a way that's more exciting and has more positive impact? Well, we pick a bank that was the first that was set up and run by a woman. There's a kind of social benefit to the bank we picked, what type of investment they do. Can we, have a societal impact in where we put the money that we've taken for the courses? We've actually, as part of our kind of off-call financial governance, we hold a kind of a reserve amount of money that relates to the course fees. And we've actually just invested it in a new bank called the Community Bank, who are run by charities in the UK, and they invest all the money into local charities and support things like village halls, which many dog trainers use, and do loads of brilliant things. It's good financial sense. The money is protected by the government guarantee, so we're kind of safe there. We do it from a kind of good educational provider sense, because until someone's done the course, that money's not PACT's money. That money's there for that course. So we do it for that sense, but it ticks all sorts of other boxes because it's being positively invested in things. They've got some really nice case studies of a assistance dog charity that was given a loan from the Community Bank. So we're seeing all of these benefits, and it starts to make something really boring like banking that geeks like me find interesting actually really exciting. And and we look across all of the different facets of our business and think, actually, can we do this business activity in a cool way that's kind of makes us excited about it? And that's part of what we try and encourage our members on the business sense to do. Is there's the things you have to do, but actually, can you make it fun? Is there a great way of doing it?
Do you know what I think actually is I don't want to use the word problem, but I can't think of another. The challenge, let's use a challenge word, is I think, and again, I'm massively generalizing CPD providers in a pot here. I think because it's almost positioned as there is a business module, maybe coming back to what you were saying earlier, Vic, of that the expectation is I'm going to
get everything I need from it.
Yeah, maybe not even get everything, but I'm going to have enough to know where to start. And I think arguably that's where it kind of falls down a little bit. What are we actually, are we almost diluting our own message as a education provider? And I had the same conversation with the university. I was like, you're almost shoehorning in a module for the sake of it. Whereas the whole premise of everything else, like say 3 years of that animal degree, to then have a random business module shoehorned in. And the idea behind that particular one was you could go and start an animal-based business. And I surveyed my class. I mean, admittedly, it's a small number, but there's like 25 people-ish in it. I was like, do you all feel like equipped to go out and start a business? And they're like, no. I was like, yeah, I didn't think so. Now, I'm not expecting someone to then go and do another degree. You could spend your whole life in education. But I think it's that diluted message. And I think that's where you get this anecdotal feedback of like, oh, the business module wasn't very good, or it didn't give me enough to get started. I'm like, I'd agree, but I also wouldn't expect any CPD provider to teach business.
No.
But then off the back of that, where do they go? And this might not be, I'm going to reframe that question. I don't mean where do they go in terms of who do they go to, whether that's us or another, whoever. It's
YouTube.
What do they need next? No, but what is it they need? So for us as dog trainers, we would know that hang on a minute, I've got all the business skills. What do I need in terms of the dog training skills? Well, you would need to get this, this and this. It depends what you want to really do with it, but you would these are your core kind of foundations. You could go here. You need to do your own research on their values versus your values, whether it fits with what you want to do or not. But at least there would be that almost like, and again, I don't want to say like a tick box thing, but it would be like, as long as you've covered these things. So I suppose
it's like a roadmap on like, where'd you go?
Where'd you go next? So for us, it would be like, so for example, if it was yourself, it might be, okay, so we do this bit, we do it really well, but we don't do the next step. So what you would need to get started in business to make it thrive, is this and this and this. There are lots of people out there that do it, but I'd look for these particular qualities around it, and maybe that's the bit that could be better.
Yeah. I mean, if it gives you a bit more kind of maybe confidence in how we do it, everyone, I'm sure there's some good practice elsewhere, but we don't call it a module. It's not a module as part of our course. It's called the Sustainable Business Series. The first part is a kind of workshop session that is in the first part of the course. So it's really early on, and it's called Thinking About Dog Business. And it's that kind of discussion I was talking about at the beginning of, what kind of things would you like to do, and how might you kind of structure that, and also what things don't you want to do. I have it's got a kind of handbook, and it kind of just says, thinking about business elements like, accounting and all this kind of stuff. Which of these would you like to do? And then the next sort of bit in the workbook is, which of these don't you want to do? Because it's just as important, and almost more important, to have an understanding about what you don't want to do as it is what you do want to do. And it's really there as a kind of prompt. And I've had feedback from a few people that have said, actually, they got to the end of the course and they've still got their 3 handbooks that they went through and wrote almost notes to themselves of what they were thinking at the beginning. And it kind of evolved as they went through. But those lectures are kind of peppered along the course, because I wouldn't want someone to, start a course and then 6 months later they get to the module at the end, which is the business one, and go, actually, I hadn't been thinking about this. You kind of need to start thinking right at the start. So which is why there is that at the very beginning, which is kind of, what are you thinking about? You said, Vicky, the kind of, what are your values? What do you want to focus on? For me, values is probably the most important thing for any organization. It's part of, why sustainable business and everything is core to PACT, is because that's something that, us 4 directors are really passionate about. And that's been a value from day one. We're a limited company, but we actually, within our models, that you have in Companies House, there's actually a whole paragraph about social and environmental value within that's been added in. And that was added in from day one of PACT, to say that we're not just about generating money. We're about generating social and environmental value as well. So, I think it's the most healthy and the most resilient thing to be running a business that's core to your value, because your heart's there and you really want to drive it. So that first sort of lecture and part of the Sustainable Business Series is just about values, and it's kind of start to think about that now, because when you get to the end of this dog course, you want to have kind of matured that in your mind and have an idea about what that next step looks like. And as I said at the beginning, that might be actually my list of what I don't want to do on a business sense is so long. I'm going to go and look to work for a charity, or go and partner up with a training school where they've got some of that infrastructure already in place. Or it might not be, and you might have a background in accounting, and actually you want to do the accounting yourself because you love that stuff. But I don't want to do the marketing, so I'm going to employ a marketer. And we talk about that throughout that. It's kind of really understanding what your values are, because that will shape the name, and what your services you're delivering will shape that as well. But then thinking about what you don't want to do and where you can get the support, because that's how we operate. I'm a spreadsheet geek. I've done a bit of accounting in my business degree, but I don't do any of that now. We have a brilliant accountant who's fabulous, and every decision we always get advice. So I mentioned about the investment we've just done for reserves for the course. We ran that past a couple of financial advisors to kind of check that was sensible and it fit with our kind of cash flow and things like that. So, everyone should. It's great business practice. We've all got blind spots. We've all got areas that we don't understand or know. And there's I made a whole career out of finding, fantastic people, knowing my limits and finding fantastic people that do brilliant stuff and getting their support. And I would say the final bit on that is paying them for it as well. I think there's, one of the values that we're really keen to kind of talk about and promote, and, is it's a fairly vocational sector. We're really, I track how much we pay people. We look at, some of the staff we've given pay rises annually. We look at, when we have speakers and volunteers and stuff, we always try and pay them for that service and support. Because I think, sometimes that can be overlooked as well. And that's part of our kind of social value as an organisation, to kind of really promote that and show that it can be a bit different. We host DogX. We always put the speakers up in a nice hotel and make sure we cover their travel, and we don't expect people to volunteer for us. We're a business. So that's, really important to us.
What are your thoughts on, so all these people that you've got within the PACT network then, what would you say is PACT's gut feel of how people are feeling within the industry then? Do you think that even though the numbers are growing in terms of there's more and more people getting accredited, what's your kind of like gut feel? I don't know if you've got any stats to back it up, but what's your gut feel of what you're experiencing on how people are feeling, the state of the industry is at the moment?
I don't think we've got the data to kind of look at it. I mean, it's something we're looking at doing a kind of member survey soon. And that's part of what we were kind of looking at as part of that survey. We will get, people reach out, and we work hard to make sure people feel comfortable. They can reach out for support and help and things. But we really don't kind of survey that enough to kind of really understand it. as you said, no one, I don't think anyone's really kind of doing it, and it's difficult because everyone's got their own agenda of what they're kind of looking at. But it's, I think, part of, and why like well-being was part of this was, dog trainers and behaviourists are coaches. If you compare that role to, say, human coaches, they, as part of their professional membership, they have to see a coach themselves every month to, almost offload the burden of that. And that's why, straight away when we started PACT, we started running wellbeing sessions and things to provide an outlet for people to offload some of that, because I think, there's the sort of classic thing of like, oh, I got into dog training because I don't like people. I just like dogs. And, very early on, you suddenly realize that actually there's a lot of coaching involved and you can take some of that burden home, and which is really hard. And so we would do a lot of work to kind of support people on that side and help them with that. And, difficult conversation skills. We do a bit of a workshop in the in-person sessions about that. And, making sure they feel comfortable with reaching out, because it can, that kind of compassion fatigue. I think we've just had a new talk that's gone live today, actually, for our members on compassion fatigue, can be quite difficult. And sometimes I think there's the financial side, but sometimes the emotional burden can be the one that kind of chews people up and spits them out of the sector. And again, that was something we were, day one, we were like, if we're going to take over PACT, that's right at the top of our list of what we want to kind of support people with and try and help people stay in the sector longer and not kind of feel like that. Because you're working with sentient beings. A lot of people will only go to see a trainer or a behaviourist when things are going wrong. It's sort of, sometimes I think there's almost marriage coaching involved in it, where it's like, my husband does this, you need to tell him to do this another way, that sort of classic thing. And, how helping people go through those conversations, but also not taking that on and, not ending up with 500 dogs because you've adopted everyone's dogs because they've not managed to train them, all this kind of, all these things. So, that's really important to us. And as I say, that was in the top 3 for us for focus of PACT. But yeah, on the kind of business sense, that's hard to tell. I think it's really hard from gauging stuff from social media is sort of one of the obvious ways of looking at stuff. But, that can change from one click to another. I clicked on something the other day, just reading something, and suddenly my Facebook wall was just filled with stuff that I thought I'd blocked to protect myself, and then suddenly my view of the dog industry was completely different to what it was a minute ago.
Scary how that happens, isn't it?
Yeah, and it doesn't take much. And, and then sometimes you get, I think, I've talked about, our kind of culture around being supportive and positive and things, and and that goes into our marketing and how we talk about stuff. I think people can sometimes like to sell a kind of negative picture to sort of almost neg people into buying things or getting support, and I think that's a difficult thing. Sometimes I don't say it's not lazy marketing, but it's sometimes it's easier to sell something negative, and we see that in other parts of society where the grass is greener over this side and things like that, than sometimes selling that positive vision. I think that's sometimes harder, but I think the outcomes are more positive and has more positive knock-on effects. But I think sometimes if you see lots of people using sort of fairly negative like approaches on marketing, it paints a different picture to how things can be. But as I say, really hard for us because we haven't surveyed, and no one has really. That's a full survey of everything. But we certainly speak to our members. We've got a AGM coming up next year, where we're going to kind of pick up things like that. but it's hard to tell. And it's very, one person's online world is completely different to another one, and you get a different view of it, don't you?
Yep, absolutely. Do you know what? Every time we have kind of like big conversations about this, you just realise, why would anybody choose this job? Because you're like, right, I've got to get the dog knowledge. I've got to have those well-being bits, because I love that. And I think that is something I've noticed a huge shift in over the last couple of years, actually, that well-being bit is starting to come in more. You've then got the business bit. You've then got
it's the client understanding as well, isn't it? One of our clients that we're working with at the moment is creating like a mentorship for dog trainers to help them understand their clients better. So therefore then the information is received better, and it's like looking at every aspect of their life and how well are we doing that at the moment? Are we just telling people how to train the dogs, but without receiving that, that anomaly information about every individual family and doing the best thing that they can with it. So there's that side of it as well.
There's so much. And I think this comes back to like the whole purpose of everything that we're always talking about. It's like, you've got to go and get the right support for you at the time that you need it, whether that's the dog knowledge, whether that's the, go and get some counselling sessions. I'd have died the other year if I didn't have my therapist. I was like, I need them in my life to help me sort through some stuff. And then, whether that's business, like whatever facet of being a dog trainer and behaviourist looks like for you, I think, it's just realise there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot. And it's not just the fact that, the dog knowledge is the reason that you're struggling, or the lack of it, or the imposter syndrome. Because you haven't got business knowledge, that's why you're failing. Like, none of these are true. No. They're not facts. It's all this over linking and blending of over.
Well, I think that the kind of positive thing I would say is, there are organisations like yourselves that provide support for different facets of that. And, I always encourage people to kind of think about those different facets that you've listed of being a dog trainer. Some of those you can outsource or not do. You could go and work for an organisation that does all of the bookings, and you go and do puppy classes for them, and you turn up and run the class based on a curriculum that they've put together. That removes yourself from all of the other kind of activities. They're all really perfectly valid ways of being within the sector. And I think, thinking about those different elements and really kind of reflecting on it and going, actually, that bit, I just don't get anything out of it. I struggle with kind of one-to-one relationships with people for coaching. That doesn't work with my personality type. But in a group, love that. I'll just do group sessions and things. And I think, you mentioned things like, sometimes people feel a pressure that they have to do every single type of training or every kind of thing. And I just want people to know they don't have to do all of those things. It's perfectly valid to have a behaviourist who doesn't do training. They could work with a dog trainer who does the practical skills bit, and they do the assessment. They could be a super expert in a certain type of behavior problem, and that's brilliant. It's like a PhD person that's dived in and is super expert at that, but doesn't necessarily need to know the other bits because there's other people within the community. I think for some people, they will want their handle on all those different facets. It doesn't have to be the case. I think don't put that pressure on yourself if you don't need to, because there are different ways and different organizations and different businesses that can support you with all of those different things. I think I've yet to you talked about a good example of mentoring. There's always someone who can kind of support you with the different facet of that if you want to not do it.
And I think it's knowing that you don't have to do all things at once either. It's going to be physically impossible. And again, even that's been going through my head, like this whole conversation of like, geez, you can see why it's easy to get overwhelmed, isn't it? Because and I think certainly for like both of us as different business providers and different business organisations, everybody just wants the best for the members that are going through their doors. And I think sometimes it's just knowing when to go. Like, that's not our area of expertise. Like, literally go over there, and that's fine. And that's what we encourage like dog trainers to do all the time. And I love that example then, like imagine how many behaviourists would be a lot happier if they would go, oh, I'm just going to work with the trainer. Like, I'll come in, I'll do the diagnosis bit and then crack on. Brilliant. It's essentially what I ended up doing with my business without realising it at the time. I like it. Oh, I've enjoyed this conversation, Jason.
Yeah, has that been all right?
Hopefully you've
You
enjoyed
look
it.
shocked.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think there's anything else to cover. That was
No, I think we've done all the things that we wanted to.
Yeah, that was good. Well, thank you ever so much for joining us, Jason.
So obviously on the normal kind of social media platforms, but if you visit www.pact-dogs.com, there's all sorts of information on our website and guidance and things. Always keen to kind of hear people. We've got a couple free courses. So there's a sort of introduction to popular breeds and a canine body language, little short courses you can do for free if you kind of want a kind of flavour of some of our activities, and a few webinars. And obviously DogX is, it's going to sell out this year. There's only a handful of tickets left for that. So it might have sold out by the time this episode goes out, the way it's kind of going. Lots of ways of kind of reaching out. And it's been really nice talking to you. And thanks for having me on. And, it's always nice, when you kind of threw the gauntlet down a little bit, and I was like, oh yeah, we can kind of have a chat about it, because it's good to have that kind of supportive kind of chat about the different elements around the sector. So thank you so much for having me join you.
No, thank you so much for reaching out and coming on. Like I say, it's been great. Goes to show, like, just have conversations. People are nice.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks very much, Jason.